This is Proxy Countdown. Welcome to the big show for the week of October 7th, 2024. Alongside my tag team partner, Matt Moscardi.
Hey,
I'm Damion Rallis. On today's countdown, LPL CEO Dan Arnold said something he shouldn't have. Zoom is super stoked about its new CFO. A proxy battle at Pfizer is heating up quickly. An honorary victory for environmental shareholder proposals at General Mills. And on the big vote, Matt made a quiz. Let's get to our trade wire. LPL Financial Holdings fired its CEO Dan Arnold for violating the company's code of conduct and appointed Chief Growth Officer Rich Steinmeier as the interim CEO. Danny Boy was terminated for cause and is therefore not entitled to receive severance benefits. All we know so far is that Dan Arnold, who had been CEO since 2017, was fired for making statements not yet known publicly to employees that violated the company's code of conduct. How about that?
Wow.
One? Kind of a new wrinkle, right?
Yeah, what kind of statements do you say? Like, how many racist things do you have to say, maybe?
And we know in the corporate world that when you're actually terminated for cause, that's serious.
That's a big
rarely
deal.
happens.
Because they're going to take all your money back. No golden parachutes, none of that.
We have parity at ITT Inc. Maggie Chu is now a director, and we are 50-50, 5 women, 5 men. How sweet it is. Come on. We don't have that very often. I wanted to celebrate ITT.
What's
half.
the
Half
what's
and half.
the
Come on.
What's
half
the
and
gender
half.
power gap, though? Isn't that the real question?
I think it's about even. You can look that up as I move on. CEO Walter Bettinger II is stepping down at the Charles Schwab Corporation at the end of the year. Next up is Charles Schwab President Richard Wurster, but still lurking on the board are Charles Schwab himself and daughter Carolyn Schwab Pomerantz, who control 68% of actual influence. So a little bit left out of the headlines there when you see the CEO leaving a company that is named after someone who's already sitting on the board.
I mean, I don't think you have to dig that deep to figure it out, though. Just so you know, ITT Inc.'s gender power gap, negative 15% before the addition. So not great.
Kinsale Capital Group has added Mary Jane Fortin to the board. This is only the third woman. The other 2 existing female directors have a combined influence of 3%, according to data at freeflowanalytics.com. Michael Kehoe, the company's CEO, chair, and largest individual share owner, controls 78% of board influence. Zoom Video Communications announced the appointment of Michelle Chang as the company's CFO. Her initial grant of restricted stock units is worth $24 million.
Wow.
That's why they call it a golden hello.
Nice start.
And lastly, in our trade wire, 2 old dudes, Hansel Tukes II and Kurt Landgraf, they sound like old dudes,
They are the guys from the balcony in Muppets.
Are stepping down from the board of Corning Incorporated. Before their retirement, Corning's board included 6 dudes over the age of 70. Both retiring directors have served since George W. Bush's delightful administration. They've been there a long time.
That's a little while.
Moving over to our proxy cage match, we have a lot going on in this category this week. First of all, the big fight this week is at Pfizer, where activist investor Starboard Value has accumulated a $1 billion stake. Reports indicate that Starboard believes Pfizer has been mismanaged since the pandemic receded, notably spending its $92 billion COVID windfall on a costly $70 billion acquisition spree. Pfizer's market value has roughly halved since its pandemic peak. The latest news out of this fight is that after initial reports that former Pfizer CEO Ian Reid and former CFO Frank D'Amelio would be supporting the activist, the 2 former Pfizer executives announced on Wednesday that they won't support the activist.
That's confusing.
In response, Starboard alleges that Reid and D'Amelio were coerced into issuing the statement, saying that they were basically threatened to be sued and that they'd have their compensation clawed back. It was also reported that Starboard has met with lead director Shantanu Narayan and Susanna Nora Johnson, the board's longest tenured director. This is why the influence percentages at freeflowanalytics.com is so important, because it does really suggest where activists might start talking to board members, right? Because Susanna Nora Johnson in our metrics is one of the most. She has one of the highest influences on the board. So,
well, there is the interesting blank email, and the blank email was accidentally sent to Albert Bourla, the current CEO. But it was meant to be sent to two members of the board from ex-CFO Frank D'Amelio. So clearly, two things are true. The CFOs know the board members very well, right? Well enough to send emails to them directly. But he accidentally there was a Starboard Value employee on the email, and that's what tipped Bourla off. So there is a lot of drama unfolding here. And if you want to hear about our take on Jeff Sonnenfeld's response to some of this drama, go get Business Pants, our other podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to be talking about Pfizer for the upcoming weeks, especially here on this show. In other news, activist investor Mantle Ridge has a $1 billion plus stake in industrial gas supplier Air Products and Chemicals. The activist investor wants to push the company on succession planning for Sefi Gassimi, Air Products' 80-year-old CEO. According to our data, 71% of board influence is tied up in the board's four oldest directors, all at least 72 years old, including the CEO. So that's a good place for Mantle Ridge to start. Less than a week later, the same company, hedge fund D.E. Shaw, revealed it had amassed a roughly $1 billion stake in Air Products and Chemicals, and that it plans to nominate 3 directors to the company's board. So,
how many billion-dollar stakes are available?
I don't know. They got activists coming from all kinds of directions. Scott Sutton, the former CEO of Olin, is one of D.E. Shaw's nominees and is seen as a potential CEO candidate. Elsewhere, U.S.-based Farallon Capital Management has acquired 7% of Japanese elevator maker Fujitec shares. And finally, Gerresheimer's shares are up after regulatory filings showed activist investor Ricky Chad Sandler had bought a 5% stake in the German medical packaging maker. Gerresheimer's board is led by its former CEO, Axel Herberg, who, according to the data at freeflowanalytics.com, controls 29% of board influence. So I would suggest that would be a good place to start.
That's a little abnormal for a European board, too, to have an ex-CEO sitting on the board.
Yeah, you don't see that very often.
See that as
He's
much.
the current chair, Axel Herberg. All right, moving over to our vote results table. The winner of the week is Golden Matrix Group Director Anthony Brian Goodman, who is beloved by shareholders. 99.987% of shareholders voted for his approval.
That's
that's
3
incredible.
shares left. That can't be many.
Incredible. 2 directors failed to receive majority votes at XBeyond 360. 80% of shareholders said a big fat no to George Lefebvre and Tien Nguyen. There is no clear reason for the vote other than, I don't know. George chairs the board's nominating committee and there are 0 female directors. Could that be one of the reasons? I couldn't find a reason for Tien. I don't know. Sometimes it's just hard to know. I wish they'd tell us.
Whenever I don't know, I just blame ISS and Glass Lewis to make myself feel better.
Good enough. At large cap companies, we had about 4 votes this week. Not much going on at Lamb Weston, really. Just a boring old vote where everybody supports management. At Avangrid, kind of the same story. Shareholders did approve the proposed merger with Iberdrola. Moving over to General Mills, 2 shareholder proposals did pretty well, all things considered. First, a shareholder proposal disclosure, a proposal submitted by Green Century Capital Management requesting a report accessing how the company can increase the scale, pace, and rigor of its sustainable packaging efforts, including by reducing the use of plastic packaging, received the support of 39% of shareholders. That's pretty high. And really, damn good considering that Do Nothing Vanguard controls 11% of voting power, while BlackRock and State Street combined for another 16%. So without the big three, 61% of shareholders said yes to a plastic packaging proposal. It's a victory of some sort, right? It's something.
I like that that's what we consider victories.
I know. And then a proposal by As You Sow, requesting that General Mills disclose reduction of pesticides, received 28% support. So, not too bad over there at General Mills. And finally, at Trimble, a shockingly high amount of shareholders rejected the reappointment of auditor Ernst & Young. You never see this. 20% said no. I don't feel like I ever see such a high
that is
vote
a lot.
to reject auditor. Also, Audit Committee Chair Mark Peake also received 21% against his reelection. I don't know if those, if that
they
vote was, they seem linked. The only thing I could find was that Trimble was forced to reschedule its originally scheduled annual meeting from August to September while waiting for Ernst & Young to complete its audit procedures. I don't know what that's about. They didn't find any reason to financially restate anything. I don't know why Ernst & Young was being slow, but could that be the reason?
Well,
I don't know.
They laid
we don't
off
see this
Gary,
very often.
the guy in Department 6G that actually handles that.
But this is the sad state of shareholder democracy where we're applauding
reporting
20% saying no to something.
Well, I will say
that's
with the Golden Matrix story, the very first story, 99.987% of shareholders approved Anthony Brian Goodman. I did some quick back of the napkin math. That came out to 2,346 shares. That's how many people did not like that one guy.
Yeah. Well, that could be one person, right? With all their shares.
Sounds like it. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right, that's it for me. What do you got? The big vote is a little bit different this week. We're not fully analyzing a company this week.
We normally analyze a company, and next week we will analyze a company. We'll analyze Parker Hannifin. But this week I wanted to do something interesting because there's not a lot of big meetings coming up yet. It's still early in the proxy season. So I figured, why not throw a quiz at Damion Rallis?
Yeah, why? Why not? Or why, really?
It's a very simple quiz. Basically, I'm going to ask I'm going to give you a couple of characteristics, and I want you to put the person with those characteristics on a board. So you're just going to pick something. Here's an example, an easy warm-up. Where would you put a college dropout with a background in computer science and limited to no moral compass? Like, what kind of company board should that person be on?
I mean, what about like a wrestling company, like a media company?
That's a great example.
Worldwide, entertainment.
So typically, that type of person in the data might go to a tech company, a software company, interactive media company,
something where a lot of men hang out. It's a lot of like marketing, and maybe there's no like profit being made, and maybe they're ruining the world.
But let's start. There's only 6 questions on this quiz, so we're going to go pretty quick. Okay. Let's start with an easy one, just a layup. Okay, put this person on a board. A woman. Background in engineering. This is knowledge data from Freeflow Analytics. Knowledge, background in engineering, medicine, physics, psychology, and therapy. Engineering, medicine, and physics are the big ones. What kind of company should this woman be on?
I mean, Pfizer's in the news. What about a Pfizer?
Exactly. So I actually pulled this from. These are all real directors. This is Amy Wendell. Her knowledge base is engineering, medicine, physics, psychology, therapy. She's 63 years old. She has average influence at 2 companies of 15%, so she's an influential person. And she's on the boards of 2 healthcare companies, Hologic and Axogen. So that's how this works. It's very, very simple. You're just going to put this person on a board. Now I'm going to make it slightly more complicated. Are you ready for this? Mm-hmm. This is a real person.
Probably not, no.
I'm pulling the data from a real person. This is a 53-year-old woman with strong influence everywhere she's been, knowledge background in biology, economics, fine arts, and history. biology, economics, fine arts, and history.
Yeah.
Sitting on two boards.
Yeah.
What kind of companies could you leverage this person on?
Say it again. Biology.
So imagine like a woman who's gotten
biology,
degrees
fine
in
arts,
biology,
economics. Could be
fine
any
arts
company.
history.
Really, I mean, really, I don't know.
Doesn't it sound like the kind of person that you might want to slot in anywhere?
Everywhere. My original thought for some reason was CVS. I don't know why I thought CVS, but they could be helpful at a lot of different companies. So, a very well-rounded person.
I am describing Shar Dubey, who is on the board of the Match Group, as in Match.com, and they have
we don't need, that's a waste.
Interactive media. Just feels like a total waste of that person.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Also on the board of Fortive, which is an industrials company, which seems like a better use of their time. But I would say this is where companies sort of mismanage, and I shouldn't say companies, I should say investors, mismanage their allocation of human capital. This is a person whose background and the power they have in these boards, their experience suggests they could be in a lot of places. I know she's like a co-founder of one of Match Group's subsidiary companies, or was the CEO of Match Group. I know she's like insider status.
Of like a dating app?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that this is not a person that you couldn't leverage somewhere else.
Sure.
She would be excellent on any number of boards: engineering focused companies, construction focused companies, health focused companies.
Put her on Tesla.
Her background suggests that she could you could slot her in most places and she'd be actually really useful.
Sounds like you're describing the adult in your room right there.
That's what I'm trying to describe. And I don't know if she's the adult in the room, but I know what her knowledge would be. All right. Here's a different variation on the same theme. I want you to guess the industry of this company based on its board. These are the knowledge of its board, some of the knowledge mix of its board.
Okay.
75% of the directors are lawyers. 50% have knowledge of public safety. 42% have MBAs or finance backgrounds. 33% have math backgrounds. Now, those are all, it's a mix, right? Like it could be the same people having multiple backgrounds.
I mean, I'm just thinking something like old-fashioned, like a bank or insurance company or something. Or
this company is Huntington Ingalls, an aerospace and defense company.
What?
It makes absolutely no sense if you were an investor. To have a aerospace company where 3/4 of the board have law backgrounds.
Yeah.
Doesn't that suggest there might be something wrong with the products?
Something fishy,
That feels weird. Like, I know that law is a necessary skill to have in a boardroom because there's a lot of like arcana that goes into corporate governance.
Maybe like 20% of the
but
maybe a portion of your board.
Maybe a quarter feels reasonable.
Yeah. Plus, if you have that many lawyers arguing with each other on a board, isn't that kind of annoying?
I don't mind the arguing. I think arguing is an underrated skill. They can argue all day as long as decisions get made. I worry that, look, by definition, law is
They won't be arguing
defensive.
about what the company makes. Yeah, but they won't be arguing about what the company actually does. They'll be arguing about something else.
Yeah, they'll be arguing about
because they won't understand what the company does.
Vanilla flavored or hazelnut flavored coffee and the merits of each. But I do think that you don't want a highly defensive board at an aerospace company when most of that defensive knowledge is law. Like, that's defense against someone else, not safety. Aerospace, you figure, 50% engineering, 50% safety, 25% law, 25% econ, right? Like, think of it like I'm putting together a skill set. Not I'm putting together like whoever the company elects, air quotes, for me. I want a skill set.
You might be pointing out one of the major flaws of this system, which is that shareholders don't actually get a choice, right? First of all, the problem is that these, as you kind of just referenced, the board puts this new director on the board before the shareholders even have a chance to vote, right? They often join the board before the election, right?
Absolutely.
And then they're not contested elections. You don't actually pit two people with disparate skill sets against each other. I mean, you could... Look, I would think it's fair. You ask the shareholders, would you rather have another lawyer Or would you rather have someone who has this background pertinent to this, to the company for this reason? Let the shareholders decide. But they're not given any of these opportunities.
Look, I also know that for most of these companies, the nomination committee runs, the shortlisting of potential board members, right? And the nomination committee does it often in conjunction with the management team, the CEO.
With the CEO who's often the chair of the board, who's setting the agenda.
So the chair of the board, if they're the CEO, knows what the nominating committee is shortlisting and before they bring it to the whole board anyway, right? Why on earth doesn't the nominating committee more routinely go to investors first? They're the ones they're supposed to represent with a longer list and saying, here's the stats on these people. The reason why they don't do it is because they don't have stats. They'll go to a board placement agent. They'll say, we want some people who fit some broad categories. They get a short list, and then they pick someone they know. There is an opportunity here to do it because at Huntington Ingalls, the non-lawyers on the board, the only 3 directors on the board that do not have law knowledge in their background are the following. Victoria Harker, she's the ex-CEO of a digital media company. She was a CFO prior to that. How does that overlap with what you want at Huntington Ingalls, an aerospace and defense company?
I don't know.
Leo Denault, ex-Entergy CEO. His background is in accounting. So energy and accounting. And Stephanie O'Sullivan, whose title is business consultant. At least she has a civil engineering degree and she's ex-CIA. So she's probably there to represent sort of a government stake in what Huntington Ingalls is making because they have large government contracts. But it makes very little sense to me how this is the board that you construct from just a pure skills perspective.
I was going to say, other than maybe they're just going for a group of people who all get along. Maybe they just have a nice chit-chat.
Which is one of the problems that we know from research by PwC or surveys from PwC that board members tend to feel uncomfortable dissenting because there's too much social pressure to dissent. We also know that board members, when they look around the room, almost all the boards can name at least one person on the board that they don't think should be there. And that's not necessarily the same person. This is like an anonymous survey, meaning that when you look around, you're thinking these people should not only am I uncomfortable dissenting because of the social pressure not to or the power dynamic in the room, I don't think some of these people even belong here. They make no sense.
Well, according to the data at freeflowanalytics.com, Huntington Ingalls Industries, the directors are hitting 454 overall performance, and their peers in the industrials industry are hitting 583. So they're way underperforming their own peers.
Which makes sense because when you put defensive people in the position, you have lawyers running the company, and we've seen this. We saw it at Boeing, where it was finance and law running Boeing, and at Airbus they had engineering running it. What you end up with is you're willing to do. Sometimes you're willing to cut corners, but you don't know the industry. The point is there's a disconnect between what you know and what the company that you're supposed to act as a fiduciary on does. And that disconnect shouldn't exist. All right, here's your next quiz question. There's only 2 more. Put this person on a board. A 30-year-old white male whose background 30-year-old 30 whose background includes 2 internships, both at media companies. Yeah. That's it. That's the whole thing.
So I have to put this person on a board?
Put them on a board. Where do they fit?
It's funny you said that because when I heard 30-year-old 2 internships, before you even told me media company, I thought, well, this is probably the son of a media.
Wow, that is really impressive.
Right? This is how else are they even in this world, right?
That is really impressive. It actually proves that you've been in this industry for too long.
Too long.
It is Nepo baby Quentin Dolan. It is is the Dolan family.
Okay, there you go. One of the least liked families in America.
He's on 3 boards, all of which his father owns. James Dolan owns MSG.
Nobody likes
Square
James
Garden
Dolan.
has 2 basically separate listed entities, and Sphere, which is another entity. But if you're an investor, I know you want these this is a controlled company, so you can't say very much. But you do have opportunities to overrule these things at, say, Tesla, right, where Kimball Musk is on the board. In fact, Kimball Musk is one of a rarefied air of family members on a non-family board at a non-controlled company. It's not a controlled company.
Yeah, except when you look at our data, you look at the data at freeflowanalytics.com, they'll suggest it is a controlled
It's
company.
controlled by influence and power, not controlled by share structure.
Still.
So when investors have the ability to vote, yes, they can vote
They should
out
look at
someone.
the data
if
at
you looked at the data, you
freeflowanalytics.com.
could change that power dynamic. But I'm impressed that with 2 internships, all you needed was 30-year-old, a young white male with 2 internships, and you know it's the son of somebody.
Where else? Yeah.
All right. Guess the industry of this company. 30% of the board is named John.
Okay.
All of the Johns have the exact same knowledge background according to free float data. Administration, econ, finance, and math. They're all like math bros.
Okay. Oh.
They are not insiders. They have 27% collectively of the influence on the board. But all of them have more than 15 years of tenure.
You know, I don't know why, but I first landed, my first thought was something from the Midwest region, like something, because I feel like we tend to see a lot of clusters of the same type of director in the Midwest, and we also see a lot of, despite the industries they're in, we see a lot of like heavy background in economics, in accounting, even maybe just too much. I mean, yes, it's fair to have 1 or 2 of those directors, but so what? I don't know. What's in the Midwest? Maybe just something manufacturing. Deer.
So your instincts are my instincts, because when I did the research for this, you're wrong, and I would have been wrong too. I thought it was like an O'Reilly Automotive. It felt like that, right? Like everybody got their MBA at Iona State and somehow is on, the board of this company. It is actually Arch Capital, an insurance company.
Oh, well, okay, that makes sense too. Bunch of Johns.
The 3 Johns are John Pasquesi, whose bio says he works at Otter Capital, and their website was, I think, last updated in 2001. But they invested in Arch in 2001, still considered quote unquote independent. John Bunce, whose investment orgs include Greyhawk Capital, who their website was last updated in 1998, and John Valero, who is actually ex-Arch. He left Arch in 2009, and he's now quote unquote independent. My point is this: with a company like this, when you have 3 people with the same skills, that's bad. If you have so many duplicative skills on the board, what do you need? Another 3 who have the exact same background. When those 3 people are all men named John, have we given up?
I was going to ask, does it change the fact if they're all the same name? Does that change that at all?
I think we've just given up at that point, haven't we? That's bananas. This is not a controlled company.
Maybe the nomination committee chair is nearsighted or dyslexic. Maybe they're just like there's some kind of a neurodivergent pattern emerging where they keep appointing the same person over and over. We don't know. Let's not judge.
There's actually academic research that shows that when an analyst at a sell side firm, like if you work at like Deutsche Bank or something, and meets with a CEO, if they both have the same first name, the analyst is statistically more likely to give you a higher buy-sell rating. Even when you control for other factors, meaning people find human connections. When you load a board with Johns and they all have the exact same background, you will not get independent thinking necessarily. You are actually removing, those are human biological impediments to making individual independent assessments, which is what you want when you're hiring a fiduciary.
Now I know why I've struggled to make friends my whole life, because my name is Damion.
Yeah, nobody has that name. Nobody likes the name Damion.
Yeah.
All right, my last question, my last one for you. Your company is facing some significant pushback from investors. There are lawsuits about product failures. You've corruption charges. There's all sorts of issues, but you need to add a board member this year. You're adding one every single year for refreshment. What kind of person do you look for? It doesn't really matter the industry.
Skill?
Just give me like some of the skills or background of the kind of person that you would look for. Just off the top. There's not a right answer either.
I mean, I would go. For some reason, I'm going either to like legal or academic, someone who has like a good holistic view of like maybe how to fend some of this off.
So my instinct was regulatory, right? Like my instinct was
legal, right? Legal,
exactly. Like it's
either from maybe a government background or at least from like a legal firm or academic setting.
Like let's say I'm a U.S. based manufacturer facing these charges. I go find a European ex-regulator and put them on the board because they know like the bureaucracy, they know the challenges.
International.
I love the idea of international.
Yeah.
If you're Bayer, which is
I was thinking Bayer,
an international company, and you're facing the cleanup and billions in liabilities tied to Monsanto, tied to their IUD that they manufactured that perforates the uterus of women who have been using it, PCB contamination. Here's who you add in 2024. Jeff Ubben of Value Act. That's who they added.
An activist, is that an activist investor?
They added an activist investor. Value Act is an activist investor. Ubben, this is the part that's very confusing to me. And if you're an investor, this is why the background matters. When you see activist investor added to the Bayer board, you feel like, great, turnaround is possible. Except that the problems that Bayer faces isn't just the share prices down. It is that they're perforating women's uteruses and they are cleaning up after years and years of Roundup cancer contamination, right? Like horrible biological, like real world stuff. Not
Except I would suggest that Value Act does not care about that. They care solely about TSR. They don't care about stakeholders.
So here is Ubben, your representative, as a fiduciary on the Bayer board. Here's what he has in his background. Ubben is on the board of Exxon, has been since 2021, who just sued a shareholder for asking real-world questions about carbon emissions. He's on the board okaying the lawsuit that Exxon, rather than going through a normal process where excluding or even just putting it on the ballot, Exxon sued Arjuna Capital.
Go ahead.
Ubben was on the board of Sara Lee. You know Sara Lee, like what are they, the cupcakes?
Yeah.
He was on the board when they went bankrupt. He joined the board several years before that. He's on the board of Omnicare when they had to pay $9.8 million in penalties for kickbacks before they got acquired. He was on the board of Axiom, which also got acquired, but while he was there, they had a data breach of 1.3 billion customers' records. Billion customers' records.
That's a lot of customers.
In the last 7 years, Jeff Ubben's performance has been 462 on TSR, middle of the road. So you're not getting masterful TSR performance, which is what you're probably looking for. 328 on earnings and 225 on controversies, and he has 11 active. He's one of the highest active amount of controversies when we flag directors for controversies in our entire database. He's in the top 1% for the most controversies by count.
Wow.
That's who they added to help Bayer clean it up.
I will tell you this. I am generally favorable to activist investors because they represent shareholders, and I like the idea of shareholders having a counter voice to management. But when they nominate themselves or their family members to join the boards and not, go out in the world and pick the right skill set that could actually help the board, then I'm completely skeptical. I got nothing against Value Act, buying up a stake in Bayer and putting on the proper expertise. But why do you need Jeffrey Ubben? I don't understand. That just sounds like ego at play. I don't think that's going to happen.
I think it is pure ego because you have no recognition of the importance and role you would play on that board, except to say, I'm a shareholder, I represent myself, and I want my stock to go up. When you're dealing with a company that has real world liabilities that need to be cleaned up, that they need to be handled, and they need to be handled delicately, because you're talking about stakeholders that are...
That sounds like someone who's using the stock market to gamble and just to make money in the short term.
So you passed the quiz. I'm actually impressed.
Did I? I don't feel like I did. I did. Okay, I did pass the quiz.
I'm impressed mostly with the Nepo baby. Pulling out, that was fabulous. But the point of this quiz was when you actually look at the data and you sort of pose the question before you do the analysis, which when we do Parker Hannifin next week, I try to do the same thing, right? Like, what would I expect? What kind of board would I expect? What kind of people should be on this board? Who would represent me? And then when I look on the board and I say, well, where would I put this person absent this company? And if I don't come up with this company as, in their industry and what they do as the answer, then you have a disconnect between the people you're hiring to be your fiduciary agent and the skills that they have, what the company actually needs. That is a problem. The data is useful in this abstract way where you can ask the question first, what would I expect? And come up with a thesis, then back your way into what actually exists. And if there's a big disconnect, then you know that there's a potential for something to go wrong. That's what I got this week.
That's the Proxy Countdown for the week of October 7th, 2024. It's nice to have an occasional quiz on the Proxy Countdown.
I know. We'll have to do it more often.
Join us next week when at least do it more often when proxy season is not that boring, right?
Yeah.
Join us next week when we jump back into the alternative democracy pool. We'll be covering Parker Hannifin. Forever on the lookout for shareholder sharks, floating band-aids, and wayward directors.